The vote passed in under 3 minutes. That was the part that stayed with Ambassador Vorath Sovereignty long after the session ended, not the outcome, the speed, 200 species, a decision that would affect an entire civilization, 3 minutes of debate and a show of hands. She stood at the edge of the great hall of the Galactic Conclave and watched the representatives file out. The dome above her was 3 kilometers across, pure crystallized argon harvested from gas giants, so old they predated most of the civilizations in this room. The light that filtered through it turned everything slightly gold. It had always seemed beautiful to her before today. Today, it just looked expensive. Ambassador Rethkar of the Vorath Sovereignty was still at the podium, still talking. His copper-plated scales caught the dome light as he gestured at the holographic display behind him. The display showed a small blue planet rotating slowly. Clouds, oceans, green land masses. It looked peaceful from this distance. Everything looked peaceful from this distance. Humans, Rethkar was saying, have now violated Conclave jurisdiction on no fewer than 12 separate occasions in the past 8 months. They entered the Praxis corridor without authorization. They transmitted diplomatic overtures directly to 14 member species without going through official channels. They have sent formal requests for membership 3 times, despite being clearly informed that species of their developmental stage are not eligible for consideration. The Krellian delegate, a being that resembled a slowly rotating cloud of silver filament, chimed in. What exactly is their developmental stage? I was under the impression they had achieved faster than light travel. Rethkar's expression didn't change. 50 years ago, yes. They have basic FTL capability, primitive weapons, no colonial presence beyond their home system. Their society is still divided into hundreds of separate governing bodies that frequently disagree with each other. By any standard metric, they are a pre-integration civilization. Yet, they keep asking, the Krellian said. They keep insisting, Rethkar corrected. There is a difference. Asking implies awareness of one's position. Insisting implies a failure to understand it. More laughter. Vorath Sovereignty did not laugh. She was watching the display, the blue planet, the clouds moving slowly across its surface. She had spent 4 years as a junior observer before her current posting, and in that time she had read every available report on the human species. She had learned their primary languages. She had studied their history. She knew something that most of the beings in this hall did not seem to think was worth knowing. Humans had been in wars for as long as they had recorded history, thousands of years of it, on their own single planet, against each other. They had developed and discarded more weapons technology in 5 centuries than most species developed in 5,000 years. They had survived plagues that killed half their population and rebuilt. They had survived wars that flattened their cities and rebuilt those too. Every time something tried to stop them, they found a way around it, under it, or through it. And now someone was about to try to stop them from the outside. Rethkar was concluding. The Vorath Sovereignty proposes a limited demonstration of superior force, a selection of orbital facilities above the human home world, enough to make our message clear, enough to remind them of their position. The vote was fast. Vera raised her hand to abstain. She looked around the room. 12 species voted against. The rest voted yes or said nothing. 3 minutes. She took one last look at the blue planet on the display. She hoped she was wrong about what came next. She didn't think she was. Admiral Mara Djen hadn't slept in 31 hours. She was standing at the main tactical console of Perimeter Station 11, which orbited Earth at a distance of approximately 400,000 kilometers. And she was watching 18 red contact signatures move steadily through the outer solar system. They had appeared on long-range sensors 6 hours ago. They had been moving in perfect formation ever since. No deviation, no response to any of the 17 separate communication attempts her team had made. They were not hiding. That was the first thing she had noted. Whatever these ships were, whoever was flying them, they wanted to be seen. Mara had been in Earth's defense network for 22 years. She had run simulations. She had reviewed threat assessments. She had sat through classified briefings about what first contact with a hostile extraterrestrial force would actually look like. She had always assumed on some level that those briefings were theoretical. "Time to intercept," she said. 5 hours, 40 minutes. Commander Rawls replied from the sensor station. He was good at keeping his voice level. She appreciated that. "They're making no attempt to communicate?" "Nothing," Lieutenant Soares said from the communications array. "We've tried every standard first contact protocol. Electromagnetic, quantum band, gravity wave signatures. We've sent mathematical sequences, universal constants, basic linguistic frameworks. We've essentially said hello in every way we know how. They're not responding." Mara looked at the formation on the display. 18 ships, each one registering energy signatures that her systems could barely process. The power output from the lead vessel alone was larger than anything in Earth's visible fleet. Visible, she thought. "Send the green light to all Protocol 7 installations," she said. Commander Rawls looked up. "Admiral, you heard me." "Ma'am, once we activate Protocol 7, we can't walk it back?" Mara looked at him steadily. "Commander, those ships are not here to say hello. They're not responding to our communications because they don't think they need to. They came here to make a point." She looked back at the display. "We're going to make one too." Rawls held her gaze for a moment, then he turned back to his console. "Green light to all Protocol 7 installations," he said. "Authorization Gen 77 Omega." "Standing by." The response came back within seconds. Across the solar system, in locations that appeared on no public record and very few classified ones, machines began to wake up. Deep inside asteroids that had been quietly hollowed out over decades. Beneath the surface of moons that official surveys had designated as geologically inert. In the spaces between orbital lanes where traffic was too sparse to notice a thermal signature if you weren't specifically looking for one. Systems that had been in standby mode for years came online. Power readings climbed. Targeting computers ran their first live calibration sequences. Ships that existed in official records as lost to training accidents or decommissioned for parts powered their main drives for the first time in operational conditions. The Protocol 7 network responded in full within 40 minutes. Commander Rawls looked at his display for a long moment without speaking. Then he turned to Mara. "Full readiness in 3 hours, 20 minutes, he said. "All stations confirmed." Mara nodded. "What about the Shadow Fleet positioning?" "In progress. Current estimates put full deployment at 4 hours. They'll be in position before the contact ships reach our inner perimeter. And the visible fleet? Maintaining standard patrol patterns. 12 cruisers, 8 support vessels, the station." She studied the display. The visible fleet looked pathetically small compared to the incoming formation. 12 cruisers against 18 dreadnoughts. To anyone watching, it looked like what she wanted it to look like. A completely overmatched defender with no real options. She had spent her career making sure it looked exactly like that. "Incoming transmission," Soares announced, "from the lead contact ship, audio and visual, put it through." The display shifted. A face appeared, large, copper-scaled, 4 arms crossed in what Mara's years of xenobiology study told her was the Vorath posture for absolute authority. The being looked at her with the specific expression of someone who has never seriously considered the possibility that things might not go according to plan. "Primitive humans," the being said. "No greeting, no introduction. You have violated Conclave jurisdiction and ignored direct orders to cease unauthorized diplomatic contact. I am Ambassador Commander Rethkar of the Vorath Sovereignty. You will immediately surrender all space-based facilities and submit to Conclave authority. Your orbital installations will be disabled as a demonstration of our superior capability. Resistance is pointless and will only increase your difficulty." The transmission ended. Mara stared at the blank display for a moment. "He didn't even give his ship's name," Soares said quietly. Mara turned back to her console. "Open a channel to the contact fleet." Channel open." She stepped forward. "Vorath Fleet, this is Admiral Mara Djen of Earth Perimeter Command. You have entered our solar system without authorization and issued threats against our people. You have one opportunity to reverse your course and leave our space." She paused. "If you fire on any human facility or vessel, we will treat it as an act of war. And I promise you, Ambassador Rethkar, you have no idea what that means." She nodded to Soris to close the channel. Then she turned back to Rals. How long until the Shadow Fleet is fully positioned? 2 hours, 40 minutes, and their weapons? Another 30 minutes after that. She looked at the 18 red contacts on her display, moving steadily inward, not slowing, not changing course. They're not going to turn around, Rals said quietly. No, they're not. Mara sat back down in her command chair. So we wait for full readiness. She picked up her coffee, which had gone cold an hour ago, and then we show them what they woke up. What do you think was waiting in those hidden installations? Write it in the comments. Because what the Vorath fleet was about to find had been building for 50 years. Ambassador Commander Rethkar's tactical officer was named Sulek. She had served in the Vorath Sovereignty's fleet for 19 years and had never once failed to correctly read a tactical situation. She was looking at her display now with an expression that Rethkar had never seen on her before. Sir, Sulek said, I'm getting secondary readings from the outer asteroid belt. Secondary readings? Energy signatures, multiple sources. They're small individually, but the aggregate output is... She trailed off. Is what? She looked up. Sir, the aggregate output is larger than our entire formation. Rethkar walked to her station and looked at the display himself. The readings were scattered across hundreds of points throughout the system. Asteroids, moons, empty orbital coordinates that should have contained nothing but vacuum. Sensor interference, he said. Reflective interference from our own drives. Sir, I've already run the correction algorithms. These are real signatures, and they're increasing. She looked at him. Something is powering up. A lot of somethings, Rethkar straightened. It doesn't matter. Our ships are the most advanced in the Conclave. Whatever these humans have hidden in their asteroid fields cannot match Vorath military technology. His confidence lasted approximately 40 seconds past that statement. The Admiral Djen's voice came through on all frequencies simultaneously. All units. Execute Protocol 7, full deployment, weapons free. On Rethkar's tactical display, the solar system changed. Where there had been empty space, there were ships, dozens of them, appearing on sensors as if they had simply decided to exist, moving in formations that his targeting computers struggled to lock onto because the ships moved in ways his targeting algorithms had never been designed to track. Not evasively, just differently. As if they were operating on a different set of physical assumptions. The asteroid belt lit up. What his sensors had been reading as rock and ice revealed themselves as weapons platforms. The asteroids themselves had been hollowed and fitted with systems his tactical database had no entry for. What the Voraths had thought was a 12-ship defender had just become something his computers couldn't count fast enough to give him a number. Sulek's voice was very steady. Sir, the human ships are not approaching us. What? They're going around us. They're targeting our fold space generators. Rethkar turned to his navigation officer. Get us into fold space immediately. The navigation officer's hands moved across his console, then stopped. Sir, our fold space generators are offline. What? They were targeted before we could engage them. Precise strikes, all 18 ships. The humans destroyed our FTL capability in the first 11 seconds of engagement. Rethkar stared at him. Before we could engage them. They fired before we fired. The navigation officer said nothing. There was nothing useful to say. On the display, Rethkar watched his fleet and the human ships begin to occupy the same space. Not the same space in the sense of collision, the same space in the sense that the human ships were among his formation. Not approaching it, inside it, moving through his fleet as if his ships were obstacles to navigate rather than enemies to fight. Human boarding parties have breached the secondary hull of the Rethkar's Pride, Sulek reported, and the Sovereignty's voice, and the Third Fist. Sir, they're on 4 ships simultaneously. How are they getting through the shields? No answer. The battle lasted 1 hour and 47 minutes. Rethkar spent most of it watching his tactical display and trying to find a decision that would change the outcome. He never found one. The humans didn't fight the way any military doctrine he had studied prepared him for. They didn't engage his ships in the direct confrontation that every piece of Vorath military history was built around. They dismantled his fleet the way someone dismantles a machine. Systematically, precisely, Working from the outside in, neutralizing capability before engaging directly, maintaining an absolute information advantage that told them where every ship was, what every system was doing, what every commander was planning before the commander finished planning it. And they were silent throughout. No battle communications, no declarations, no responses to his attempts to negotiate or protest. Just the quiet, methodical work of people who knew exactly what they were doing. It was the silence that frightened him most. Sulik. Send an emergency transmission to Vorath Prime. Already transmitting, sir. But what? The humans appear to be aware of our transmission frequencies. They're not blocking the signal. They're letting it through. Why would they let it through? Sulik looked at him. Because they want whoever receives it to know what happened here. Rethkar looked at his display. At the red contacts going dark, one by one. At the Earth sitting blue and undamaged in the center of the system. At the remains of the most advanced fleet the Vorath Sovereignty had deployed in 200 years, floating silent in the outer solar system. He began composing the transmission himself. High Commander Vos Mareth was reviewing supply requisitions when his aide burst through the door. He knew immediately from the aide's face that the supply requisitions were no longer relevant. The report took him 4 minutes to read. He read it twice. Then he walked to the window of his office and looked out at the capital of Vorath Prime. The city was vast, 300 million people going about their lives in the amber afternoon light. Not one of them knew yet. In a few hours they would know. Everyone would know. Activate the planetary defense grid, he said. His aide, a young officer named Kress, was already at her communication terminal. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting incoming contacts, multiple vectors. The count is... She paused. Sir, the count is uncertain. Our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at dozens of approach vectors simultaneously, but the visual confirmation doesn't match the power readings. What does that mean? It means we're seeing power signatures consistent with hundreds of vessels, but our optical and mass sensors are confirming far fewer. Either our sensors are malfunctioning on multiple systems simultaneously, or the humans are using stealth technology that our instruments can only partially detect. Mareth looked at the sensor display that was forming above his desk. Red contacts scattered across a three-dimensional map of the Vorath home system. Too many to count easily. How long until they reach the outer defense perimeter? 4 hours. He contacted the fleet command. Get me every available ship in defense formation around Vorath Prime. Request emergency military assistance from all allied systems. Then, he sat down and started working through what he actually knew. The fleet that had been sent to Earth was gone. 18 Vorath dreadnoughts, the most capable military hardware his civilization had built in a generation. Gone in under 2 hours against a species that his own intelligence services had rated as pre-integration primitive. His intelligence services had been wrong, not slightly wrong, not wrong about the margins, wrong about the fundamental premise, wrong in the way that suggested the humans had specifically, carefully, deliberately arranged for his intelligence services to be wrong. How long, he wondered, had they been planning this? The first human ships reached the outer defense perimeter 3 hours and 58 minutes later. Mareth watched the engagement on his tactical display. He had deployed 31 vessels to the perimeter. Heavy cruisers, modern weapon systems, crews with real combat experience. The human ships went through them the way weather goes through a window that someone forgot to close, not violently. Just inevitably. His ships found themselves engaging targets that moved before they fired, that appeared behind them without warning, that seemed to have complete and perfect information about every system and every decision in real time. But the human ships didn't pursue his retreating vessels. They went past them, toward Vorath Prime itself, toward the infrastructure. They're not attacking the fleet, his tactical officer reported, his voice carrying genuine bewilderment. They're attacking the facilities, power generation, communications networks, transportation infrastructure, food distribution systems. They're not targeting population centers? No, sir. Only infrastructure. Mareth watched on the display as decades of construction disappeared in sequences of precisely targeted strikes, not random destruction. A systematic, obviously well-researched dismantling of everything that made a complex civilization function. His intelligence services had told him humanity had basic FTL capability and primitive weapons. These strikes were being conducted with such precise knowledge of Vorath infrastructure that the humans clearly had detailed operational schematics for facilities that didn't appear on any public record. "They know everything," his tactical officer said quietly. "Every system, every backup, every redundancy. They're hitting them in sequence." "They'd been watching us," Marath said. "Sir?" "For a long time. They'd been watching us for a long time, mapping everything, learning everything." He looked at the display. While we were dismissing them as primitives, they were taking notes. The lights in his command center flickered once, then went out. Our emergency power came on immediately, but it was a message. A very clear message about who controlled what right now. 3 days after the battle at Earth, Marath sent his surrender transmission. He kept it short. There wasn't much to say that the situation hadn't already said clearly. What do you think humanity had been hiding, and for how long? Drop your answer in the comments, because the answer to that question changed everything about what happened next. Council Speaker Oren Vasti had been in his position for 60 years. In that time, he had presided over the resolution of 4 interstellar border disputes, the admission of 17 new species to the Galactic Conclave, the negotiation of 2 major trade framework agreements, and the management of 1 genuine civilizational crisis involving a species that had accidentally destabilized its home star. He had never presided over anything like this. The Great Hall of the Conclave, which had held 200 species 3 weeks ago, now held 43. The others had stopped responding to communications, sent word that they were temporarily withdrawing from conclave activities, or in 6 cases simply gone silent entirely. The dome above still filtered gold light across the chamber, but it felt different now, less magnificent, more like something that belonged to a version of this room that no longer existed. Vasti reviewed the reports that were still coming in. The Vorath Sovereignty had surrendered unconditionally on day 3. Their military was neutralized, their infrastructure disabled, their government intact but functionally powerless. They would survive as a civilization. It would take them generations to rebuild to their previous capability. Every species that had voted to authorize the action against Earth had experienced something similar. Not destruction, not conquest. A precise, methodical reduction of their ability to threaten anyone. Power systems offline, military communications disrupted, trade networks crippled, each one calibrated perfectly to the level of their involvement in the original vote. The 12 species who had voted against the action had experienced nothing. Not a single incident. As if the humans had a complete record of exactly who had voted for what in a closed session that no non-member species was supposed to have access to. They had a complete record. Vasti was certain of it. A soft chime. "Incoming transmission," his communications officer said, "from the human admiral." Vasti straightened in his chair. "Put it through." The woman who appeared on his display was older than he had expected. Gray-streaked hair, a face that had the quality of someone who had spent decades making difficult decisions and was still upright because they had made most of them correctly. She was wearing a plain dark uniform with no decorative elements. She looked like someone's senior administrator, not the commanding officer of a force that had just disassembled the most powerful military alliance in galactic history in under 2 weeks. "Council Speaker Vasti," she said. "I'm Admiral Mara Djen. I think we need to talk." He studied her carefully. "Admiral Djen, the Galactic Conclave is prepared to discuss—" "There won't be negotiations," she said. Her voice wasn't unkind, just exact. "I'm not here to discuss terms. I'm here to tell you what the new situation is." The chamber was very quiet. She continued. "Every species that voted to authorize the attack on our home world has had their military capability neutralized and their critical infrastructure selectively disabled. They'll survive. They'll recover, eventually. But they'll do it understanding that their decision had consequences that lasted longer than the moment they made it." Vasti found his voice. "Admiral, The Conclave acted on the basis of intelligence reports that clearly understated your capabilities. If we had known, if you had known what we were actually capable of, you would have feared us instead of dismissing us. She said it without heat, just stating a fact. But you would still have seen us as a threat to your established order. You would have found other ways to try to control us. He didn't respond because she was right, and they both knew it. The problem isn't your intelligence reports, she continued. The problem is your system. Your entire galactic civilization is built on the premise that older means better, that the species who have been in space longest have the right to determine the conditions for everyone else, that anyone who doesn't fit your categories gets pushed back into them. She paused. That's not civilization. That's just a very large and very old hierarchy pretending to be civilization. Vasti shifted in his chair. The Conclave has maintained galactic peace for thousands of years. You've maintained galactic stability, she said. That's different. Peace means everyone is doing reasonably well. Stability means the same species stay in charge. You've been very good at stability. Vasti looked around the chamber. The 43 remaining delegates were listening in complete silence. So what does humanity want? He asked. Nothing from you, she said. That's the first thing you need to understand. We don't want your technology. We don't want your trade routes. We don't want a seat in your council or a leadership role in your community. We want to be left alone. She leaned forward slightly. We will trade with species that approach us honestly and respectfully. We will defend ourselves against anyone who threatens us. We will share knowledge with those who ask the right way. But we will not be governed, and we will not be controlled, and we will not be dismissed. And if the Conclave objects to this? Vasti asked. She almost smiled. Council Speaker, your sensor teams have been tracking our operations for the past 2 weeks. How many human ships have they confirmed visually? He consulted his display. Reports indicate 12 vessels matching the original patrol cruisers. But the energy signatures suggest 12 ships, she said. Everything that happened over the past 2 weeks was conducted by 12 visible ships and an unknown number of assets your sensors can't resolve. She looked at him. What we just showed you, using assets you can partially detect and capabilities you partially understand, was enough to neutralize your most powerful military alliance. She paused. What we haven't shown you is considerably more than that. The implications settled into the chamber like cold air moving into a warm room. Vasti looked at this woman who had just, in the space of 2 weeks, permanently changed the shape of galactic politics and tried to find something useful to say. What happens now? He asked. Now humanity goes home, she said. You govern what remains of your community. The disabled governments rebuild. Life continues. But the conversation you had 3 weeks ago, where 200 species voted to teach a primitive civilization its proper place, that conversation is over. She paused one final time. I suggest you share that information widely. There may be other species that haven't gotten the message yet. The transmission ended. Vasti sat in the emptied chamber for a long time without moving. Around him, the 43 remaining delegates were quiet. No one seemed to know what to say. The hum of translation devices continued because they were automated and did not know that the nature of what they were translating had changed. He activated his personal log. Council Speaker Vasti, final entry of the current administrative period. He stopped. Started again. We built our system on a simple idea, he said slowly. That time in space meant wisdom. That advanced technology meant the right to guide others. That civilization was a ladder, and older species stood on higher rungs. He paused. We were wrong. Not about everything, but about the thing that mattered most. We forgot that there are more ways to develop than the ways we developed. We forgot that being new doesn't mean being primitive. We forgot that a species that looks small from the outside might be looking right back at us from the inside, taking notes, waiting for us to understand that what we were doing was wrong. He was quiet for a moment. Humanity spent 50 years watching us, learning us, preparing for a moment we forced them into. And when that moment came, they won so completely that they didn't need to want anything from us afterward. They just went home. He stopped the recording, activated the Conclave's emergency broadcast. His next words went out to every surviving member government simultaneously. To all species receiving this transmission, he said, by order of the Galactic Conclave, the Sol system and all human space is hereby designated as absolutely restricted territory. No species shall enter human space without explicit human invitation. No species shall attempt any form of coercive contact with humanity. No species shall make the mistake of assessing Earth's capability by what Earth chooses to show. He paused. This is not a political recommendation. This is the most important survival guidance the Conclave has ever issued. Humanity demonstrated the capability to dismantle our entire military alliance while showing us only 12 ships. They showed us mercy by choosing precision over destruction. Do not mistake mercy for limitation. He closed the channel. The hall was silent around him. The crystal dome above scattered gold light across empty seats. Somewhere out there, 12 human patrol ships were heading home, and whatever traveled with them, invisible to every sensor in galactic space, was heading home too. Vasti looked at the empty podium where Rethkar had stood 3 weeks ago, laughing, certain, completely prepared for a galaxy that had just stopped existing. He wondered if the humans had always known it would end like this. He suspected they had hoped it wouldn't. He suspected they had prepared for it anyway. That, he thought, might have been the most human thing about them. The preparation wasn't confidence. It wasn't arrogance. It was the quiet, unsentimental work of a species that had survived everything its own world had thrown at it and had decided, somewhere along the way, that surviving wasn't enough, that it was better to be ready. Even if you were never sure you'd need it, even if you spent 50 years hoping you wouldn't,